All right, Larry Kruger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show as we get things rolling here on August the 7th, 2024, 6:30 on the West Coast, 9:30 on the East Coast. And we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out in Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket chili. Tell them that Krug sent you. And also, we should tell you, thanks to our sponsor Better, BETR, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Sign up now using the code Niners, and you can get the first deposit matched up to $250. All right, let's talk a little bit about the story of the day. Brandon Aiyuk, still a Niner. He still has not been moved. What's the latest? What's the greatest? Did the Niners botch this? I mean, we could go back and forth with all kinds of different thoughts on did the Niners screw this up or not. The latest is that Aiyuk wants to be a Steeler. The 49ers are now trying to work out a deal with the Steelers. You heard Adam Schefter say the Niners are in no rush to get this done. They'll get it done when they get it done. The Niners have been, as far as did they screw this up or not? I mean, I'm a John Lynch fan, but they should have traded this guy, in April. I mean, on draft day, like everybody else. Instead, they're like, no, we're going to get a better deal. We're going to hold on to him. Then they went and drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round. They drafted Jacob Cowing in the fourth round. And now here they are in early August. And it feels like they're not in the driver's seat when they hold all the leverage. Why is that? If you're not in the driver's seat and you hold all the leverage, you have botched the situation. And that's kind of how I see it. I think they have botched this situation. They should have moved him earlier. Instead, they decided that they weren't going to pay him. They knew that the market, as soon as he told them in February, and it was reported by Ian Rappaport in February, that Aiyuk wanted to wait until the entire market had set itself, that Justin Jefferson and all the top receivers had signed before he signed. So he wanted the market to set itself and reset itself upward so that he would get more. And it worked. The market reset itself twice. The market went up. And yet it sounds like the Niners offer has not gone up. So the Niners allowed the market, allowed him, they weren't proactive. They didn't get it done early. They waited till the end. Well, when you wait till the end, you're going to pay the most, but they don't want to pay the most. And since they knew they didn't want to pay the most, and if they're dug in as deeply as they are, they probably knew they were going to be this dug in April. So why didn't they just pull the trigger on a deal in April? Now, Josina Anderson is reporting that the 49ers need to get a wide receiver back in this trade. Why? Because Cowing is a nice player, but he's a tiny little receiver and he's hurt. Ricky Pearsall is hurt. These guys we haven't even gotten into the meat and potatoes of the physicality of this season. There's been no joint practices. There's been no games. These guys have been subjected to very little physical abuse, and they're both hurt. So now the Niners can't just move Aiyuk for a pick. I mean, first of all, you're inside your Super Bowl window. So it was always going to be a loser situation to trade a star player for future draft picks in 2025 when you're trying to win the Super Bowl this year. So draft picks in 2025 really don't help you win the Super Bowl this year. So all the more reason that you should have gotten it done on draft weekend. So to me, once you didn't get it done on draft weekend, weren't you kind of saying, hey, you know what? We're going to go to the finish line and we'll get this done next year? The urgency, you would swear that the Niners are on the verge of having Brandon Aiyuk plucked from their roster and losing him on the verge of losing him for nothing. The way this is being talked about. They own his rights for 3 years. They own him this year on the 5th-year option at 14.1. They own him next year on the franchise tag. They own him the following year on the franchise tag. There's no urgency to move this player. And there's definitely no urgency to move him for 60 cents on the dollar. And that's what these trade offers sound like. And now we're reading that the 49ers want to get a deal done with Pittsburgh because Aiyuk won't go to New England, doesn't want to go to Cleveland, wants to go to Pittsburgh. So now he's going to be able, in a year where he's not a free agent, where the Niners have him on the 5th-year option as the states in the CBA, he's not just going to say, I want to be traded. He's going to say, I want to be traded to this particular team, a la, NBA trades. Now he's going to call his team. And if you're Pittsburgh and hey, man, he ain't going to sign with Cleveland. He ain't going to sign with New England. What's the motivation to up your offer? Who are you really bidding against at that juncture? You're bidding against yourself. If you know that he's not going to sign an extension and you know that no team's going to pull the trigger on a trade unless he is going to sign an extension with them, then if you're the only team that he's willing to sign an extension with that's still negotiating with the Niners, why are you motivated to pay the Niners price? Why are you motivated to pay any price? If that's the situation, why not just hold out and wait until the 49ers have to trade him to you? But this is the NFL, and it's not quite the way it works. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this shakes out. I think it has gotten personal between Brandon Aiyuk and Kyle Shanahan. I think Shanahan is disgusted by the hold in. I don't think he respects it at all. I don't think he likes the fact that he was talking up Jaden Daniels over Brock Purdy, that he was talking up the greatness of playing for the Washington Commanders over Kyle and the Niners. I think in some ways, Aiyuk kind of pushed a little bit too hard. And I just think that when, what's pretty clear, and Joe Banner said, I mentioned this to Grant Cohn, we were sitting in the media room today. There was a thing last year with Joe Banner, and he was really talking about Trey Lance. And he's like, once Kyle Shanahan changes his tune on you and doesn't like you anymore, you're done. Once you're in the doghouse, there is no return. There's no getting out of the doghouse. Once he doesn't like you, he's never going to like you. Once he didn't like Trey Lance had to go. Once he didn't like Brandon Aiyuk, suddenly now Brandon Ayuk's got to go. Now John Lynch has got to get in between there and just basically say, Kyle, enough of the emotional garbage. We'll make the best decision for our franchise if and when we're presented with a good offer, we'll take it. And until then, we're going to do nothing. So the Niners could have dealt Aiyuk on draft weekend and didn't. They drafted Pearsall and Cowing to give themselves leverage. Now here we are first week in August, and Pearsall and Cowing are hurt, and their leverage is gone. And now the Niners are saying that they need, from Pittsburgh, a package of draft choices that they can then spin to a third team for a replacement wide receiver. Now that's interesting. So who are the, let's just say the Niners could get, let's just say for the sake of the debate, James Daniels and draft picks for Aiyuk. But they need a receiver because they don't want Calvin Austin. And I wouldn't either. I mean, come on, he's a tiny little receiver. You don't need a Calvin Austin. And, all this talk about New England, Kendrick Bourne, I'm not even convinced Kendrick Bourne makes the team. He's coming off an ACL. Niners are pretty deep at wide receiver. But we're talking about Pittsburgh now. And I don't think Pittsburgh is moving Pickens. And I don't think Pickens is the Niners kind of guy anyway. He doesn't block. A little bit of a diva wide receiver, to be completely honest. Is an amazing talent. Don't get me wrong. He is a huge talent and far and away their best receiver. But he doesn't block. And Niner receivers, you got to block. You got to block. And he doesn't block. So who are, if the Steelers really, really want Aiyuk, and let's just say they're giving James Daniels and they're offering some package of picks, and the Niners are trying to turn those picks into a receiver, what receiver do you want? Let's talk about some of the options right here. The Raiders, Devontae Adams badmouthed Jimmy G on the receiver series on Netflix. I think it's pretty clear that Devontae wants out. What would it take? Could you get Devontae for a second? Could you get Pittsburgh to give you a second and James Daniels and turn that second around to the Raiders for Devontae? That would be intriguing. The Jets are the team that wants Devontae. Could you sit there and get some package of picks and turn around and flip Devontae to the Jet? Get Devontae from the Raiders for a pick and flip him to the Jets and maybe get a Garrett Wilson or an edge rusher. That would be interesting. I love Garrett Wilson. He's a great young receiver. Supposedly he's been fighting it out this summer in Jets camp with Rodgers. Rodgers wants Devontae Adams. The Jets badly want Devontae, to reunite him with Rodgers. If you could turn around and turn Devontae into a pick and then flip or turn picks into Devontae and then flip Devontae to the Jets for Garrett Wilson, I would do that. I would absolutely do that. Denver has Cortland Sutton, who's a big receiver who's been rumored to be available for like a second or a third round draft choice most of the summer. 6'4", 210. Let's just say you got James Daniels and a second round pick and you turned around and flipped that to Denver, that second round pick to Denver for Cortland Sutton. Sutton is not as, he doesn't separate like Aiyuk. I don't think he's as dynamic as Aiyuk, but he's bigger. He's a big-bodied wide receiver who's in his prime, and he's damn good. Cortland Sutton's a big-bodied receiver who can make plays. How about T. Higgins? I've been hearing that T. Higgins, the Bengals have yet to sign Jamar Chase. They eventually will. He'll probably get the most or close to Jefferson money. I can't imagine. I won't even throw out Jamar Chase because I don't believe Jamar Chase is even gettable. But T. Higgins, I think, is gettable. Would you be interested in T. Higgins? Maybe you could get James Daniels in a second-round pick from the Steelers, flip the second-round pick to the Bengals for T. Higgins. Now you got T. Higgins and James Daniels. That wouldn't be bad. I think those three guys, Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, Cortland Sutton, those would be the three receivers that I think you could probably flip a day 2 pick if you could get it from the Steelers. You could probably flip it to Cincinnati for Higgins, Denver for Sutton, and Raiders for Devontae. Raiders may want more, but I think that's doable. There are a few other guys on this list. DeAndre Hopkins from Tennessee. They just paid Ridley. D-Hop, you might be able to get D-Hop for a pick. I can't imagine Dallas would ever trade CeeDee Lamb, let alone to the Niners. So I won't really throw that out. Jacksonville's got Christian Kirk, who's got great speed, very dynamic receiver. You might be able to turn Christian Kirk. You might be able to get a couple players from Pittsburgh in a late pick and flip a late pick for Christian Kirk. It might not even take a high pick. There's Amari Cooper from Cleveland, who we've already been rumored here. If the Browns are looking to move off of Cooper and his contract, maybe you could flip, get a pick from Pittsburgh and flip it to Cleveland and get Amari Cooper. Maybe you get James Daniels from the Steelers and Amari Cooper from the Browns. So I don't know. I mean, to me, it makes you feel like the Niners botched this because here we are. They're not willing to pay this receiver. They other teams, supposedly there's 5 or 6 other teams around football that are willing to pay this price for Brandon Aiyuk. So there's that. Then, you had many more options draft weekend, as far as guys in the draft and moving up or down. You held out for a number one. Did they just think this whole thing was going to go away? They just think Aiyuk was going to show up this summer. Everything was going to be perfect. And so they kicked the can down the road. And here we are. Now it's July. It's a distraction. Shanahan clearly is turned this into an emotional thing for him where he's moved on from Aiyuk. I think that's clear. I think Lynch is trying to make sure the Niners get the very best deal they can get. And now Josina Anderson is reporting they're gonna need a receiver back. And, at the beginning of camp, it's like, well, wait a second. You drafted Pearsall, you drafted Cowing, and you may not need a receiver. But now here we are a few weeks in, and Cowing's had hamstring problems, and Pearsall has been in the blue jersey and looks a little fragile. And now you got to kind of wonder, is Pearsall and Cowing ready to play? Or are they going to have to sit there and find a receiver? And the fact that Josina Anderson is saying that the Niners are wanting to get draft picks and then flip those draft picks for a receiver kind of tells you that they feel like they need a receiver. Well, if they need a receiver, then maybe they ought to go for Brandon Aiyuk. But I think that ship has sailed. I think it's sailed in the eyes of Aiyuk. I think it's sailed in the eyes of Shanahan. I think Aiyuk would rather move on and save face. And I think Shanahan would rather Aiyuk move on and just get down the road. So I don't think, the Niners have a lot of great players, but, it's not like you can't pay everybody. So it's not the decision to pay or not pay Aiyuk that's frustrating. It's you could have traded him on draft weekend and gotten picks and players that could help you now. Instead, here you are. It's the first week of August, and you're looking to trade him. And you could, and then now you're looking for a team that can afford to pay him. Now you're looking for a team that has assets that they're willing to pay you. Now you're looking for a team that has a wide receiver asset, and things are getting very, very specific. Like there could only be 1 or 2 potential bidders, and now they may have to include a third team and pull off. People talk about, I would suggest, hey, Aiyuk might get traded. People are like, oh, there are not a lot of trades in the NFL, Krug. There's even fewer 3-way trades, but that's where it's going right now. Sounds like the 49ers need a 3-way trade to make this a reality to get Aiyuk to the Steelers. The Steelers want Aiyuk. The Steelers probably have one piece to the puzzle the Niners want and picks. The Niners are now going, we can't trade Aiyuk and have him go to the Steelers and have him be one of the best receivers in football and have Pearsall and Cowing not ready to roll. And now we're down to, subpar receivers. So we got to get a good receiver back. So now they have to get a receiver, and they don't like the Steelers receivers, but Aiyuk wants to go to Pittsburgh. So now they got to find a third team. Somebody's going to have to broker that deal. Once again, is there a way out of this? I don't know. It's starting to feel like a lose-lose situation. Like Aiyuk's going to lose. And the Niners are going to lose. The Niners are going to lose Aiyuk, and then Aiyuk's going to wind up losing by wherever he chooses to go. But it's starting to feel like there's the win-win situations. It's starting to feel like the lose-lose situation. What would I try to do if I could do it? I think what I would try to do, because I think Davante Adams is sincere about wanting out, and I think the Jets are very sincere about wanting him. And I think I would try to use Aiyuk and see if I could work my way into some kind of something where I could get assets, flip them for Davante, get Davante and flip him to the Jets and see if I could get Garrett Wilson. And I know it's a lot of machinations there, but I think that's the smart route. Garrett Wilson's a young receiver with a ton of talent, lots of upside, cheap, and that's what they really need. They need a cheap, dynamic receiver, not an old receiver. And, they need a dynamic receiver, but they need a dynamic receiver that's not super expensive because they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy $60 million next year. And they got a loaded roster, and 25% of the best players in the league in the top 30 are on the Niners. So if I could sit there and do that, that's what I would do. I would see if I could get Devontae out of Vegas, see if I could flip him to the Jets and some kind of deal involving package of players, and see if I could turn around and get Garrett Wilson. I mean, that's what I would try to do. Garrett Wilson's been bickering with Rodgers. Garrett Wilson's a great young talent. They badly want Devontae. The Raiders, I think, are looking to move Devontae. I think you could probably get enough assets from the Steelers to satisfy the Raiders. You might have to throw another pick in to flip Devontae to the Jets and get Garrett Wilson. But, I mean, that's at this point, since you're talking about, hey, you need a receiver. Well, if you need a receiver, then you know what? Between Devontae Adams, who's 31 going on 32, Cortland Sutton, who doesn't separate great in Denver, and T. Higgins, I think I'd like to have T. Higgins of that group. The question is, could you get enough picks from the Steelers to flip it to Cincinnati to satisfy them for Higgins? I've seen rumors that Higgins could be flipped for a second or a third. Can you get that second or third from Pittsburgh and go turn around and get T. Higgins? All right. We are sponsored by Better, BETR, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Sign up using the code Niners, and you can get your first deposit matched up to $250. All right. Let me go full screen here, and we will. There we go. Hold on. There we go. All right, we're going to build a little roster here. So why don't we start? What do we got, Kev? We're operating this in the background. Let's go with Mahomes. Full season. I'm gonna say it says more or less than 4,350 passing yards, 0.5 passing yards. I'm gonna say this is gonna be a big passing year for Mahomes. I'm gonna say more passing yards than 4,350.5 for Mahomes. All right, we're going to go down the list here. For Brock Purdy, 3,900 passing yards. I'm going over. I like more than Brock Purdy's 3,900.5 passing yards. So that's 2. We're going over there. For Justin Herbert, I'm going to go under 3,600.5 passing yards. Jim Harbaugh likes to run the football, and they play a slow pace. Jim Harbaugh believes in 3 yards in a cloud of dust. So we're going under on Herbert there with Harbaugh. And Caleb Williams, is that Caleb Williams? I'm going under 3,500.5 passing yards. This is the Chicago Bears. And just watching a little bit of Hard Knocks the other day, you had some veteran player getting in Caleb's face going, dude, this is your team. You got to take the lead. Makes me think that, there might be some bumps in the road. Okay, so let's invest. Yeah, let's invest 20. We'll invest 20. So 20 wins us 200. So there you go. 20 wins us 200. Deposit to fantasy. All right, there we go. Let's go 20. We'll go 20. All right, there we go. So get up to $250 first deposit match. Use the code Niners. That's right. And of course, thanks to our sponsor, Better, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. And we thank them. And of course, sign up using the code Niners, and you get that first deposit matched of up to $250. and $50 thanks to Better for sponsoring The Krug Show. All right. So coming down, I'm going to hit a couple of these in the chat. See what Coach says. Larry, you don't seem like a gambler to me. Coach, you don't seem like a guy who knows me that well. That's what I would say to you, Coach, because I am a gambler, and I do gamble a lot. No. I mean, not a lot of money, but very often. Here we go. We've got this one from James Foster. It says Lynch and Ryan Williams' relationship is preventing the 49ers from letting Aiyuk play on the 5th-year option. I don't know if I really believe that. So Ryan Williams, the agent for Aiyuk, is also a friend of John Lynch. I don't think it's that. I just think that Lynch understands that that's kind of like the fallback. The 5th-year option's the fallback. Everything blows up. Let's say the Steelers Niners can't get on the same page with the Steelers. Omar Khan and John Lynch never get on the same page. All right, so that deal blows up. Now you're still negotiating, and he won't sign. And you're offering your $26 million. He's not taking it. He's not going to sit out the whole year. He's not, because the year won't accrue. So he's going to play this year, and he's not going to make no money. So he's going to come back, and he's going to play. He's not going to walk away from $14.1 million. So the Niners can play super hardball. And I would say this, and I was talking to Dave Lombardi about it today on the field. We're both kind of in agreement on this one. There's a time to chalk up an L and get down the road, right? Sometimes, you've heard the old saying, lose the battle, win the war, usually with your significant other. By the way, happy 25th wedding anniversary to my lovely wife, the lovely Amy Kruger. Today, 25 years ago today, August 7th, 1999, we tied the knot in St. Mary's Church in Walnut Creek. Best decision I ever made. Here we are 25 years later, 4 children, still going strong. Happy anniversary, honey. Happy 25th anniversary. I love you. And thanks to all the people in the chat who are getting to hear that, hear me share those sentiments. I know you guys all care greatly about my wedding bliss. But 25 years is pretty good. 25 years. 25 years. And I was really nervous at the engagement party because people kept saying, is she a big sports fan? And I'm like, no, my wife's not a big sports fan. They're like, she's not a sports fan? I'm like, no, she's not a sports fan. And they're like, I don't know. What are you guys going to talk about? But that's the thing, it's like working anywhere. If you're a lawyer, do you want to talk about law at the dinner table? I shouldn't say that. My brother's a lawyer. You're constantly talking about law at the dinner table. But I would imagine you don't want to bring, if you're a doctor, you're talking about medicine at the dinner table, or you're talking about something else. So, we don't talk a lot of sports, her and I, but it's found a way to work to this point. So love you, honey. Thank you for 25 amazing years and 4 beautiful, wonderful children. But yeah, James Foster, I don't know if I'm buying that one, James. I don't know about that. I just think that it's gotten personal with Shanahan, because I think he's done with Aiyuk and would just like to get it over with. But you can't just get it over with, because it's an asset. And if you get it over with for 75 cents on the dollar, the fans are going to be over with you. And you want to see fans turn on Lynch and Shanahan, just make a couple bad trades and miss the playoffs. All of a sudden, you'd be surprised. They'll come up with alternative coaches and GMs that they'd rather have. So I think Lynch has got to be the buffer here. And I agree with Dave Lombardi. Just let Aiyuk sit. You don't like it? Tough. Who cares? Sit. We're not making a bad decision and making the Pittsburgh Steelers a Super Bowl contender, just because you've decided you want out and you want to go there. Sorry. Kevin Wood, this says Crabtree in 09 vibes. Also reminds me of a more dramatic version of Jimmy G in camp 2 years ago. Wouldn't be shocked if he winds up staying. Oh, I know. I mean, at this point, anything's possible. Kent says, how about they trade BA to Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh sends picks, maybe a second and a third or a fourth to Vegas, and Vegas sends us Adams. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I could see that. I mean, and Devontae Adams would not be bad. Once again, though, you're trading. How many years of an NFL football player is their prime? 7? And Adams is like 5 years older than Aiyuk. So you could be losing out on an awful lot of prime there. But Adams is a great player, and that would be, wouldn't be awful as a fallback to have Devontae. Clarence Beeks, member for 26 months. He says, Cooper or I hurt myself. Clarence, don't say that. Yeah, Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is a whole lot better option than Kendrick Bourne. If you go, I can't go with Kendrick Bourne. I mean, it's got to be Demario Douglas. If they go Kendrick Bourne, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to absolutely lose it. Though it sounds like New England's out. Brent Cassidy says, although the trade talks may annoy the Niners, how much do you think they appreciate the ability to see how much cap space juggling they can do? Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, they have the biggest cap crisis, right? They've got a quarterback making 9 and change that they're going to pay 60 times that a year from now. So that's a fundamental difference to their cap, and that means that there's going to have to be fundamental alterations to their roster in the name of good players departing. So, yeah, I mean, this whole debate of can they afford Debo or Aiyuk, Debo, Aiyuk, at the end of the day, when you crunch these numbers and really look at it, they probably both are going to have to go. That's how severe. And that's if Brock's making 60 mil, and I think he probably is going to be making 60 mil. Ricky Williams says, Larry, we fumbled this one, period. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue that they didn't fumble this when they're now looking for a third team that they can spin Pittsburgh's picks to net themselves a wide receiver that they can use this year, as they're trading a 26-year-old wide receiver who knows the offense, who they have under contract this year at $14.1 million. So, yeah, I mean, there's about 9 points of anger and frustration right there. I mean, they got play. They kicked this can down the road. They allowed the situation to be played by the situation. They got into a very reactionary mode, in my opinion, and now they're stuck with very limited options. Aiyuk sounds like he's emotionally and mentally moved on from them. I think Shanahan is emotionally and mentally moved on from him. And yet, how many teams can really afford to pay him what he's seeking and satisfy the 49ers in a trade? And now the Niners need to be satisfied with a particular position. Now, it is wide receiver, and there are a handful of guys. I guess the question I would ask you guys in the chat here, and I do agree with Ricky that the Niners fumbled. The question I would ask you, am I not thinking of all the receivers out there? Because to me, it's, okay, if the Niners are really trying to get picks from Pittsburgh, they got a deal worked out with Pittsburgh, but now they want a receiver, but they don't want Calvin Austin, and the Steelers probably don't want to move George Pickens, and Pickens is probably not Shanahan's kind of guy anyway. So the Niners are saying, hey, Steelers, we'll take, whatever the other piece is. My guess is it might be Nick Herbig, because I think the Niners badly need an edge rusher. But it could be James Daniels, because they badly could use an offensive lineman, a veteran offensive lineman as well. So let's say it's James Daniels or Nick Herbig, one of those two guys, and picks for Aiyuk. Could you get enough picks to flip to Oakland or Raiders, Vegas for Devontae? And then what about to Cincy for Higgins? And what about to Denver for Sutton? And what about to Tennessee for Hopkins? And what about to Cleveland for Cooper? So, I mean, I guess the question I would throw out to you guys is this. If the Niners could make this trade with Pittsburgh and get, let's say, either an edge rusher like Nick Herbig or an offensive lineman like James Daniels and picks, and they could then choose the wide receiver that they would flip those picks for, who do you want? You want Devontae? He's 32, 31 going on 32. You want T. Higgins? He's big vertical threat. I don't know if he runs the full tree, but he's a big 6'4" receiver, huge catch radius. Cortland Sutton's also a big man, but I don't think he's got separation ability. Hopkins is a little on the long in the tooth. He's definitely played his best football. I don't think CeeDee Lamb or Jamar Chase are viable options. Then there's Amari Cooper. There's Terry McLaurin. There's some kind of creative deal for Garrett Wilson. Maybe Jacksonville for a Christian Kirk. That's all. I mean, I was brainstorming. That's all I could come up with. I don't know. Is there a receiver I'm not thinking of that the Niners could flip a second or third round pick from the Steelers and bring to town that would satisfy Niner fans? I would say my first choice would be T. Higgins, just because Adams is going on 32. That would be my first choice, would be T. Higgins. My second choice would probably be Cortland Sutton. And then I'd go with Adams because just of the age factor. I mean, if we're talking about all receivers, I would be trying to sell out for Garrett Wilson, because Garrett Wilson is in some ways even better than Aiyuk. He's younger, cheaper, with more of a future. I like the idea of getting that kind of a piece. I'd almost rather give up other assets and other pieces and trade other picks with, Aiyuk to flip it for Devontae and flip Devontae for Garrett Wilson. I don't think Garrett Wilson's going to get traded, but I'm just saying, to me, that would be exciting, because then you're talking about a superstar young receiver who could grow up with Brock Purdy and be really, really special. Let's be honest about this. The Niners have babied Ricky Pearsall thus far. He's yet to play in the one-on-ones. Why is that? Is that because they think that he can't get open one-on-one? When people asked about it, there were references to the deep end of the pool. Like, hey, maybe we don't want to throw a Ricky into the deep end of the pool. Well, guess what? That's exactly what's going to happen week 1 in the NFL, is you're in the deep end of the pool. So is Ricky disappointing? He's definitely not been healthy. And then Cowing, I love what I saw from Cowing when he was healthy. But guess what? The next day he wasn't out there. And that was kind of my big concern with Cowing, because he's kind of on the smaller side. So Cowing and Pearsall look good. You don't understand, though. Debo's a house. Aiyuk's a house. JJ's a house. These guys are big, physical, strong guys who can take hits. Pearsall doesn't look like that. Cowing doesn't look like that. Those guys don't look like that. So I just kind of wonder, it's one thing to say, we found a replacement in the draft. Okay, but it's a 17-game schedule. Can those guys stay healthy all year? JH says, can't blame BA. If he gets hurt, he's screwed. Ricky Williams says, if we don't get a D-line star or an O-lineman, it's a bad trade. Yeah, I mean, especially with the Steelers. Steelers just drafted, in my opinion, the best tackle, guard, and center in this last draft. And the Niners badly need to upgrade their offensive line. And in the same year that the Steelers drafted what is, in my opinion, the best offensive center, guard, and tackle, and the Niners need an offensive lineman, and the Niners are going to wind up trading Brandon Aiyuk to the Steelers, but they're not going to get any of those three guys. That's hard to stomach. I would take Zach Frazier in a minute and just get down the road and plug and play him at center and call it a trade. But they're not. I don't think they're going to get any of the. I don't think they're getting McCormick or I think they may get James Daniels. But I mean, ultimately, the 49ers, are now in a position where they're days away from their first game. And they don't, know who their starting wide receivers are going to be. They drafted 2 replacements who aren't on the field because they can't stay healthy. They can't make a deal for Debo or for Aiyuk without getting a receiver back, and yet they can't make him go anywhere that he won't sign. So he's kind of forcing his way to Pittsburgh, but they don't have a receiver. But now you need a receiver. I mean, it's starting to become very, very messy, and the parameters are starting to get very, very difficult. Now, if the Niners can get a player and a pick or 2 from the Steelers and flip it to a third team for a receiver that they can use, that's great. But I mean, what are the odds that they're going to get a dynamic receiver? The one thing that's really noticeable this summer about being at Niner camp is they don't look as dynamic. They don't look nearly as dynamic without Aiyuk soaring across the middle on some of these crossing patterns like we saw last summer. They just are not as dynamic offensively without Brandon Aiyuk. It's clear watching it. So I hope that if they do need a receiver, and they do, I hope they get a good one coming back, or at least one that's dynamic. I don't even need a great receiver as much as I need a dynamic receiver. I need somebody who can make plays down the field, because that's really what they leaned on Aiyuk for, is making big plays down the field. And he's got to make those big plays down the field. All right, that is going to do it for us. Thanks to of course, thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to our sponsor for this video, or for this live stream, Better, BETR. Thanks to them, the official daily fantasy sponsor of the Krug Show. Sign up using the code Niners, and you can get your first deposit matched up to $250. And thanks to all you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube. We also have lots of merchandise. If you guys want to go buy T-shirts or anything, we got a bunch of stuff in the Krug Show store to check out. A couple people commented early in the chat. Krug coming back to KMBR. Yes, coming back to KMBR. We'll be doing a lot of Niner coverage at KMBR. Thank you to KMBR for bringing me back into the fold. And I still will have this YouTube channel. We'll still be operating it as actively as we ever have, if not more so. But in addition to this, you'll now catch me every day on KMBR 680 and 104.5 and across all their socials. I'll be on their pregame show, on the postgame show. You'll hear me on the radio station every single day of the football season. And you may even hear me for an entire football hour in the drive time. That's still yet to be announced, but it's coming after Labor Day. So I'm very excited about that. Really thrilled to be associated with Mike Holler and Larry Bloomhagen and all the good people at KMBR. I'm really excited to reunite with Tommy T and, Adam Copeland and John Lund and all my friends over there. So I really do appreciate the fact that KMBR said, "Hey, Krug, come on back. Come on back. Be part of our expanded Niner coverage." So thanks to KMBR, man. Really, seriously, I'm excited to be back, and we're going to do some amazing stuff at these sports leaders. So that does it for us. Have a great night, everybody. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you won't get exactly what you ask.